this is going to be a preview of the register designer for ThunderPOS. We're going to really show just what you can do with this product. This is working off of a early build, so some differences may be there between this and the final product in terms of the look. The functionality is going to be at least as good, and you're going to see exactly what you can do with this to make your point of sale match your store's needs and your store's looks. So the first of the two examples we're going to do in this preview is starting from a blank template. And we're going to do just a very simple register with maybe 10, 12 items on it in terms of what you can do. So this would be for a store that didn't need to track customers, didn't do used, nothing like that. Somebody who just wanted the most simple register possible. There's only a few things you actually have to put on there. We might put a couple more than that. But the other example we're going to show after that is going to just be modifying an existing template and then showing how you can start from one of our baseline ones and then get something that looks really different and really great. So we're going to begin with a completely blank template for this first part. So there's a few things here you'll set up about the thing. You're going to name the template. So we'll just call this a very simple register. And you can set the title bar text. That's what appears at the top of the window. And it will actually appear at runtime. So you can say, ThunderPOS and then put your store name there. You can just put your store name there, that kind of thing. For this one, we'll just call it, very simple register spelled out. And we'll just design this one. We won't use my full screen, but we'll use a lot of it. So then we are going to create this. So you'll notice we get a completely blank screen there to work with. Let's change the back color. We're just going to use kind of a real light color. You would probably do something that makes sense for you. You would maybe use your store's color scheme, something based off your logo. We'll do something like that with the ThunderPOS logo for the modified one. But for this one, we're just going to use let's just use a very light color. So then under pop-ups and payments here, you can actually set the color scheme for all of your pop-up message boxes, that kind of thing. We will do this for the other example, but for the moment, we're just going to leave all that at its defaults. So under the add controls heading, you'll find all of the stuff that you can put on the register. Things like your items button or your customers button, or all of the labels about information. It is a little intimidating at first, but they are grouped together in one of two ways. One is by default, it's just like the functionality goes together. The other is if you're looking for like a label, you can hit control type and you'll see label, and then you can see all the different kinds of labels you can put. A label is just free floating text. So if we start here, we're going to just start with the most important thing on the screen. The only thing you actually have to have is a items grid, and you can find that under register function and just items grid, or it's under special in control type because it's unique. So this one is just a bit different than everything else in that nothing else has to be there. You have to have some way to finish the transaction, but there's a couple different ways to go about it. But you do have to have a items grid. So we're just going to put this on here. So as you can see, once we hit add and then we click over here, we can position it. And then if you look at the mouse, you can see that as we move it, it's changing the icons. If it's just a little arrow, nothing's going on. If you get the little 4 arrows, you can click and drag to move that around. Or if you get the resize arrows, you can click and drag to resize it. You can also, if you right click it, go to edit, and then it'll pop it into the edit window here, and then you can control like the width and height a little more precisely than you can do with a mouse. So if you're positioning a lot of stuff really carefully, you may end up wanting to do it through numbers. The other thing I should mention here, because it's probably not something that you'll know much about coming into this, is anchoring. And this is super important if you ever resize your register. This is how it handles the resizing. So basically, the way this works is anything that's checked, that item is going to keep exactly that far away from the edge of the screen that way. So if you click both top, so top left is clicked by default on this one. So that just means like even if you resize, it's going to stay exactly at that position in the top, towards the top left. So it actually won't move it at all or resize it. If we don't have top or left checked, if we don't have anything checked, it's just going to kind of keep it proportionally where it is now. So like we'll try that now because it actually also works in the designer. So if we uncheck those and then we maximize this, then you'll see it actually moves towards the middle. If we then go back and we make it right bottom, you'll see it actually moves a lot further because it stays exactly the same distance it already was from both. And then if we click all of them, so it's actually going to grow and shrink so that it stays that far away on all sides. And for the items grid, typically you actually make it grow and shrink with the screen. That is what we're going to do. We're actually going to make it grow and shrink completely with the screen, both vertically and horizontally. But we are actually going to make it much bigger. We're going to have the space here. We're going to go with kind of a very different design where the item grid takes up most of the space. And then you can also, on the item grid, you can also go under advanced here. And then you can actually change a lot of things about the font and the colors of that. We're going to do this with the other design. But for this design, we're actually going to take away all of these columns because they're not going to use used or any of this. We're just going to take away all these columns. We're going to make it very, very simple. So the non-optional columns, there's a few non-optional columns that will still be on there. And you'll see those when we actually get to seeing this in action. So we're going to add a couple more controls on here. So things that we definitely want. We want a way to scan in items. So we're going to go for register functions and I'm going to switch to control because I know where they are a little bit. So we're going to go for the item ID text box. So you'll see again when we hit add, and then it'll switch to this cross cursor and we click, it's going to just drop it in. Same deal, we can move it, resize it. We will put a label on there saying what that is. So we're just going to call it a generic label. Means it's not going to be tied to anything. It's like a lot of these other labels update based on what's on the invoice. Generic labels are a way to just put text there. So you could do things like instructions to your employees for things they have to remember directly onto the screen. But in this case, we're just going to say scan item. Put it there. And that font's pretty small, so let's go ahead and edit that. And we're going to actually change the font. And we'll make it, there's one we use a lot is this Microsoft font here. So we'll just do this and we'll call it, we'll do bold and 14 point. Then you can make it black, you can change the color, any of that kind of stuff. So we'll just make it that way. And then we will add just a totals box to show everything on there. Now, this is not very customizable for the totals box, but you can actually get individual labels for your total, tax, and subtotal if you want to do something different with your totals rather than the kind of generic one we have there. So then we're going to add buttons to cancel the transaction and then complete the transaction. then just to position so we're going to make these much bigger. And then we'll make them stand out here so they're a little fancier. So in order to line them up, we're just going to line from left here. So you just click the thing you're wanting to align from, and then click the ones that you're wanting to have match. Then you just hit the escape key to cancel that once you're done. We are going to actually move these a little closer. And then we'll edit each of these. So we'll edit this one. We're going to make the back color red. Then we're going to make the font white. And then we're going to make the font also just bigger. And then you can copy formatting from that button and just click onto another item, and it'll copy that size and everything. Copies the colors and the font. But let's instead change the color on this complete one to just be green. And then this is technically all you need for a register. So we're actually going to just save this and show it. For a more complicated one, we will do the modified one in a bit. But just this is kind of to show how little you need, how much of a radical difference you can make with it. So then we're going to save this template. And then we're going to go into ThunderPOS, close out of the template. And we're going to just log in here, and we're going to load up this template. So we just go under Register Layout, we go to Import New, then we just browse to that public folder directory we just saved in. Public documents. So it was demonstration. So it's a very simple register. We're going to select it, and we're going to hit Register. So we did not anchor these in the bottom left. That's actually a demonstration of why you need to anchor things. So we would go back and fix that. But in order to scan it here, we just put in the item number. In that case, I scanned a non-inventory item. And then sell it. You can complete, you can cancel. Same as any other register. But as you can see, it's much more simple than the typical register. This obviously is not like an example you would go with, but it's a good one to just show how different you can make things. Now we're going to show off modifying the template in a minute, modifying an existing template, but that's going to do it for this one. So in this part of the video, we're actually going to go through and we're going to modify an existing template. And we're going to show how we can take one of the base ones that came with ThunderPOS 5.0. We're going to kind of make it our own with our store colors, which we're just going to use the kind of ThunderPOS colors, the blue and the dark gray, as the baseline. But we're just going to start by loading from a local template file. And if you do this, you can find these layouts in your layout directory within ThunderPOS. So if you just browse to Program Files directory and then Extreme Software Corporation and ThunderPOS, there's a layouts folder. And you'll actually find the baseline ones. Like I said, we're going to base this off the standard 2 design. So we'll load that up here. And the standard 2 design here is one of our more popular ones. It's very good for a game store or a record store that does a lot of the advanced features, but we're going to modify this. We're going to make it more touch friendly. We're going to make it for a larger resolution. The base designs were all designed to work on a 1024 by 768 screen, which means they don't necessarily, they'll scale up, but they don't use the space that well. So we're going to just take this, we're going to actually make it for a Surface tablet. So we're going to make it Make it 1800 by 1200. So this we're going to make it a 3:2 ratio. Not going to maximize it. So in order to do this, we're actually going to move the taskbar, because the resolution of the screen I'm on is not the resolution we're really designing for. We're going to take this, and you can see here, once we go to this resolution, there's chunks of empty space here. There's a chunk down here, up here, and in the middle here that aren't getting used. And then on a surface, you get this bigger resolution, but with a smaller screen, so our touch targets are pretty small. And then also, it is just our default color scheme, our kind of the base control look, which is a very good neutral look. It's good if you're going to be clear a lot of stores, but it's not ours. So we're going to make it ours. So we're going to go back over here to the designer here, and we are actually going to change the back color to start with. And I already know the colors I'm going to be using. You can do it off of numeric ones, but I have actually looked up the ones we're going to do. So the gray we're going to use is just red, green, blue, 60, 60, 60. If you want to use the base colors, they're right there. They're a little easier to use, but you can do a custom color. So that's kind of the color we're going to use. So then for our buttons, we're going to change those as well. So we're going to use, for buttons, we're going to use a blue background. And again, I've looked this one up. It is 93, 138, 199 is the color we're going to go for. So this kind of middle-ish blue. So that's going to be our background color on our buttons and our other major controls. We're going to actually have a white text, and then we are going to use a particular type of font that's kind of recommended for your UI elements by Microsoft on Surface ones. So if you can see here, that's the kind of the look we're going for on the buttons. We are going to make these bigger. We're going to remove some of them. Namely, we're going to remove the tender type buttons. This is kind of a common request by customers when they ask about register customization. They don't necessarily like these cash account credit check buttons. So in order to remove these, actually it's very simple. We'll just go ahead and do that. You just right click it and you hit delete, and that just gets rid of elements you do not want on the screen anymore. If you're starting from a blank one, that works as well. It's just not usually as necessary. So rather than having to do that editing manually for everything, we're just going to hit copy formatting from on this items one. You'll notice the cursor goes over to that cross again. So we're then just going to start clicking, and you'll notice that the text here, because we've made the font quite large, does not fit on these buttons. We are actually going to go through and resize them to make them much larger. So we'll just do this on the ones that we're going to copy this formatting for. As you can see, it's pretty quick to change these. So we're going to hit escape on that. So we're going to get rid of this totals box. We're actually going to use custom labels. The totals box, as I mentioned before, is not very customizable. So if you want to go with different colors or a different look for that, you just use the individual labels. And you can still get the same sort of look if you really want to, but it'll allow a much greater flexibility. So we're going to delete that totals box out as well. So then we are going to edit the group box here to give it that same background color that the form itself has. But for the labels and the group boxes, we're actually going to make the text a little different. So we're going to go with a gray color for text, just a little more of an off-white than a gray, honestly. But and then we are going to make the font also that same larger font. But we'll just make it 12 point instead. Then we'll just copy that formatting. We're going to make all of our labels that. We're going to have to do a lot of resizing here in a minute, and then moving some boxes around, but that's okay. So, and then just to have everything that we're going to put on the screen in place, we will just go ahead and add those labels. So if we switch back over to the designer window, under add control, you'll find either under information or if you go under control type and then label, you will find the subtotal, the tax label, and the total label. So those are kind of your totals box information, and then you just use generic labels to label it as subtotal, tax, and total if you want to. So I'm going to just go quiet here. We're going to actually fast forward the next bit, but it's basically just going to be repositioning and setting everything up. And then we will show you the final result in the end. And as you can see, we've got a nice look here. Let's put it in that resolution that we had built it for, the one with the surface. As you can see, it's kind of, we didn't do anchoring for a smaller screen on this because we're going to take advantage of the larger screen. So if we can just fill this out here, and then we'll actually try adding a couple of items here. We'll just do a couple of miscellaneous items. As you can see, we filled out some of the pop-up colors on this one, as well as the grid colors. So we're going to actually put a few items on here in order to show that off. So let me just pick a couple items. This is just a very simple database that I just had set up here. Just add like 3 or 4 items. As you can see, you can do like alternating row looks on the grid. As usual, you can shrink and increase the size of each column. A lot of these columns are also optional now. We actually increased the font size on the grid. That's why it's quite so large, even at this resolution. But you can play with that. You can play with a lot of settings. And as you can see, it's fully functional, like any other register, but not like any other register. It's our register. And this should give a sense for what you can do with the register designer, but it's really open-ended. You can really make something that is yours, that is great for your store. And we hope that you'll all be very excited about this. It should be coming out in the near future. Keep an eye out on our newsletter for information about it and what all you can do and what you can make. And we really look forward to seeing what you all are able to do with this, because we really think it is going to be something special.